I want to ask you please to put your hands together, not only for John and his team in advance for all the work they put into running the course, but please a very warm Cobis welcome to Charlie. Thank you, Charlie.
It was a Thursday, first lesson after lunch. The students were in year 9 and they trudged back into the lesson. They weren't looking forward to it. It was a lesson that was famously unspectacular. Miss Jenkins tried her best, but they knew that within a few minutes they wouldn't be engaged. But when they walked into the classroom, something different had happened. Miss Jenkins had moved the desks and the tables to one side, and there was a big space, in the middle of which she stood. There was some music playing. Just like that. And Miss Jenkins said nothing, but she indicated, like this, for everyone to stand. The students started asking questions. They were curious. They wanted to know what was going on. And she just said, shh. And gradually, the students started telling the late-coming students, stand in the circle. We said stand in the circle, stand in the circle. And they all stood there expectantly. And it took about a minute. And by the time Miss Jenkins spoke, those students were so ready to learn, she could have taught them anything. This is a great example of what we can do, the small steps that teachers can do in order to make an outstanding difference. This course that has been organised over the next couple of days is about great teaching and great learning. And we're going to look at some of the things that you will doubtless already do in order to make your learning outstanding, and see if there's a few extra tips and tricks and things that we can do to enhance them. And before we do that, there's a really important message. And this is a message for teachers all over the world, and particularly teachers in this room. And it's a message that we don't hear enough. And that message is, this is an extraordinary thing you do. And as a parent, as someone who works in education, as a member of society, I really want to thank every single one of you for undertaking this task of being a teacher. Nowadays, it would be a lot easier to be something else. You can earn more money elsewhere. You can possibly travel more elsewhere. You may not be able to have longer holidays, that's another. But to stick with teaching, this lifelong career, this vocation, is an outstanding thing. So, thank you. And if you don't hear it often enough from your schools, from your colleagues, from your parents, then acknowledge yourself and keep thanking yourself. And another acknowledgement for you coming here. Often, I think some of you in your holiday times, giving up your free time to come and study, to undertake a course, your own professional development. We've heard people have come from Central America, people I understand have come from Africa, all parts of Europe. This is a great commitment. Thank you for doing that. What are we going to talk about over these next half an hour, 40 minutes? 3 topics. Firstly, looking at the small steps that we can take in order to make our teaching better, and the quick wins that we can get. Like the example I gave of Miss Jenkins, which was a true example that I saw in a school in West London. We're also going to look at how we can improve our teaching in our own way. Not an imposed model that someone else tells us to do, the one cat fits all, but a way that as individuals we can apply what we learn to our own style. And finally, let's have a look if we can make a little bit of sense of the overload that there may be in education for all of these initiatives. What we call initiative tourism. We find a bit of an initiative over here, this part of the world, that part of the world, we bring it in, and it all seems a bit much. We need to find a way to pick our way through that. is brain friendly, which does mean an element of participation. So take this as an opportunity to participate, but it's also by invitation. If there are a couple of activities to do over the next 40 minutes, feel free to choose to observe and not participate if you want. You can learn like that, or to participate fully. It's absolutely up to you. So, let's start. 200 years ago, Dickens wrote, "It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times." He could have been writing about education in the 21st century. Well, why the best of times? The best of times, there is great opportunity to teach outstanding lessons. There are resources that get shared generously by teachers. Does anyone use the TES website to share resources? There are 750,000 resources uploaded. If you want, you may never have to prepare a lesson yourself. You could upload it all yourself. You need to adapt it. The generosity of colleagues. There are opportunities to move between sectors, to move between phases, to go from primary to secondary, from independent to state, and opportunities for promotion. So the best of times. And why the worst of times? Well, the worst of times because, although good teaching is required, the bar seems to keep on being raised and raised and raised. Do better, do more, do extra. The expectations of colleagues, of leadership teams, of parents, of governments increases incrementally. Someone said to me the other day, good is no longer good. That's a scary thing to say. And there's some judgment from society. People still say teachers have an easy life. We can laugh at that, can't we? It's not true, we know that. There's a bit of political scapegoating. It's a very easy area for governments to start meddling because they use tools that they think they know best. So it can be the worst of the time. And nowhere else is this paradox of best of and worst of seen more than in what we are expected to do in the classroom. Not good enough just to be a good teacher and to know our subject. We've got to know their learning styles, haven't we? So that we can make our lessons visual and auditory and kinesthetic all at the same time. We want to help build their learning power so our students become resilient, responsible, resourceful. And we need to develop their thinking skills. So that's another thing playing on top. We're starting to get a bit nervous, a bit panicky, we're starting to feel a bit nudged, doesn't it? Don't forget to design your lessons using the accelerated learning 4-step process. Make sure your questions are delineated, high order, low order, Bloom's taxonomy, yet more. And of course, Colin's alluded to it earlier, assessment. Assessment for learning is really important. We've got to be formative, we can't be summative anymore. Don't forget to differentiate, don't want to miss anyone out. And finally, become neuro-experts. Know what is going on in the brain. That's all you've got to do. And if it was a bit much, put it on a nice, easy to follow line. We'll be there. And please, can you do all this with a smile? More like a rabbit caught in the headlights, slightly startled. And teachers so often say, I don't want to worry about all that stuff. I just want to teach my subject. I just want them to leave me alone so I can get on with what I am doing. Well, fear not. Because help is at hand. We have a stunning array of presenters over the next 2 days to take you through everything you need to know. You've heard John's given you the outline of the programme. There are teachers, there are education experts, and you can get curriculum stuff, you can get pastoral stuff, you can get leadership stuff, a whole range of really interesting things. So we said, small wins, small steps. Why small steps? Well, you saw from that slide before, so many expectations, but we do so many things differently. Who's been in an instance where it's been said, we've got this new initiative, and we all need to sign up to it, and it's a big thing, and we need to change our practice? Anyone have that experience? We had to shot up very quickly there. And it's like every term, the reinvention of ourselves. We need to do something new, we need to do something different, and it's a big change in our practice. Research shows that big steps often don't stick. Small steps often stick. So unless there is a compelling reason to make a wholesale change to your practice, the encouragement is take small steps. Find one thing to do, one small change in your practice. Implement that, and then look for the next. So some small steps. And quick wins. We all like quick wins. We all like things that we can absorb quickly. So here's one. Researchers at Harvard University took two groups of people who were going to undertake stressful research essays. Job interviews, giving presentations, performing in public and so on. And the first group, they got them to spend a couple of minutes before this stressful activity adopting what they call a low power pose. See the image? Making themselves small. Whether stood, sat, making themselves feel quite small. They then had to do their activity, and they reviewed, and they found out two things. Firstly, that they didn't perform their activity very well. And secondly, something had gone on in their physiology. Their levels of cortisol, a stress hormone, had risen. And their levels of testosterone, which gives us power and confidence, had dropped. So that's a quick win to avoid. The other group they got them to stand in a high power pose. And you'll recognise some of these. This one called the CEO. This one, I think it's called the President Going to War. And this one, of course, we'll all recognise, some of us certainly, as the Wonder Woman. 2 minutes of doing that pose, one of those poses. Not in the room, but before you go into the room. And it was an opposite result. It was an opposite result. They performed better, their cortisol levels dropped, stressed down, and their testosterone levels rose. So they had the power and the confidence. So let's do about a couple of minutes, let's do that. You've met people, introduce yourself to the person next to you, and then choose one high power pose that you're going to do, and do it for 30 seconds. Off you go. certainly noticed and felt the difference. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes before a stressful activity, you may have the odd one, you may have the odd one. You feel a little bit of trepidation before. That's a quick win. A quick win. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to improve teaching your way. Now, has anyone noticed the new thing in education seems to be let's look for the outstanding teachers and then copy them? We have seen a plethora of roles being invented around that. We have advanced skills teachers, excellent teachers, we have lead practitioners, teaching and learning champions, excellent coaches, and so it goes on. I was invited to an in inset. And in this inset, the outstanding teacher in the school was delivered. Let's call him Simon. Simon was a great teacher, and what he did was extraordinary. His lessons were a cross between the X Factor and the Saturday Night Kids Show. He was on the tables, he was jumping around, he was very excited. The kids absolutely loved it. And his message was, deliver like me, it will be great. Your lessons will be stuck. Now we did an anonymised poll at the end of this incident. We asked for feedback. And two really important things came up. Firstly was, see how he does it, but I don't know how to do that. I'm not Simon. And the second thing was, Simon's obviously an extrovert, and that's the way that extroverts teach. I happen to be an introvert. So how can I teach myself? Now when we talk about extroverts, introverts, often teachers are extroverts. They enjoy being at the front of the room, they quite relish the attention, they quite enjoy thriving, reading off people, and all of that stuff. But many teachers are also introverts. Many teachers also enjoy quiet reflection, more intimate conversations, one-to-one, and encouraging movement from the room rather than from themselves. Let's do a quick straw poll. Who here considers themselves to be an extrovert, who enjoys that noise, enjoys being in front? Obviously the people who did the one moment, that's the best. Quick show of hands for the ground, so we probably got 15%, maybe, something like that. And who here considers himself to be more introverted, who enjoys the quiet introspection? And let's say that the rest of you either feel confident that you can either flex between introversion and extroversion, or you didn't understand the question. One of the things that's going on at the moment is that there is prejudice against introverts. So there is this belief that if you're an introvert, you can't be a great leader. You need to have the charisma of a Clinton or an Obama. You need to be able to be outstanding on the stage. You need to be able to capture people. It's not true. Of course, these qualities are great and really helpful, and let's encourage those in extroverts. But if you are an introvert, know that the power of creative reflection is really important. And also know that in order to be an introvert, you can still have dynamic lessons. It's quite simple. You don't do all the jumping around, you get the kids to do it instead. That's what works. So, introverts, extroverts, be clear that you don't have to change. If someone says, here's a new initiative, you need to be like this, you don't have to be like this. You need to be what is true to yourself. The third topic we have is about being overloaded with initiatives. I showed a slide earlier on that demonstrated the amount of things that we have coming our way. Let's just take a step back from that and think about the role of a teacher. Now, teachers, particularly in the modern era, do three things, and they do three things well. They clearly deliver their content. They deliver their subjects and they deliver it well. They also develop in their students a love of learning. So students are passionate and interested and continue wanting to learn. And thirdly, probably most importantly, they provide for their students a toolkit so that they can be resourceful learners and they can continue learning and become better learners, not just better at their subject. And how do teachers do that? Well, the qualities that we see of teachers who can do that really well are, again, threefold. Firstly, they build great relationships. They have a really good rapport and they are engaged with their students. Secondly, they don't take on board every initiative piecemeal and try and implement it, but they have one. There is one strategy that they'll take on board, and they'll implement it, and they'll build their teaching practice around one strategy. almost doesn't matter what the strategy is. And finally, they're self-reflective. Self-aware, unlike this chap, realistic. They know what their capabilities are and they know what they need to do to develop this. So let's look at these three domains. Great relationships. We'll all have that way of building great relationships. You will see it in yourselves. You'll see it in the feedback you get from your colleagues, from your students, when they thank you, when they understand you, when they show that you have understood them. A great educator, Patsy Rodenberg, was talking on desert island desks. She spent half her life teaching in schools, the other half teaching in prisons. And her conclusion was this: that you can't teach anyone unless you care about them. You hear the noise in the resident. That's true, isn't it? So a couple more quick wins, a couple of things that we can do to build on our relationships with our students. One is ask questions and then listen. In the class, out of the class, just ask the question and don't respond. Don't feel that you have to tell them something. Just listen. I don't know any teachers who go home after a hard day and say, I'm really tired, you know what, I just did too much listening today. It doesn't happen. And another quick thing. One of the most powerful things that we can do when we build relationships is give praise. And we can give helpful praise, and we can give unhelpful praise. So let's do another brief activity. You remember the famous power pose of almost 10 minutes ago? With the person that you did the power pose with, can one of you, the person who, let's say the person with the longest hair, good answer, John and Colin is quite sure everyone wrote that one out. If you've got the longer hair, what you're going to do is you're going to praise your colleague for how they did the power pose. But the rules of this pose are this: you are going to give evaluative praise, which means you are going to use words like this: great, fantastic, super, special, extraordinary, just superlative. You've got about 20 seconds to do that. Off you go. this evaluative praise and give you this descriptive praise. What difference did anyone notice? Shout.
From the first one, I was skeptical.
Yes.
I didn't know. And I think the second one was beautiful.
So skeptical versus true. Didn't believe it versus believed it. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Genuine and personal. Thank you. Sir.
First, I felt like I was in promotion.
That's fantastic. Great.
So detailed, as opposed to the fake feeling on any information. Thank you for those examples. And speaking as a parent, it's really easy to get caught in that trap that we're giving that great super smashing type of praise. If we can take the time occasionally to give some praise that's more descriptive, people will get this, as you said, feel that it was genuine. Thank you, participants. So the second issue is finding the one targeted approach. I put this slide up earlier on. All of these approaches, they're all great in their own right, and they're all very important. And each one of those, that's very helpful. And we have got experts here who talk about many of these and others. This is one that I've seen working very successfully. And it's this. It's about intrinsic motivation. It's looking for ways to develop your lesson planning and delivery so that your students are motivated intrinsically. Now in schools, we are experts at extrinsic motivation, aren't we? Whole systems are designed around it. We have merit badges, we have reward systems, we have trips, we have diaries that we write, we have good work incentives, we have good conduct incentives. If you look at the catalogue of education supplies, you'll see about 30 pages worth of materials that you can buy under the heading of motivation. It's all extrinsic. And it's fun. However, it doesn't develop a sense of self-responsibility. So when the extrinsic stops, the intrinsic starts. And what we're aiming to do here, as opposed to the extrinsic there, is to develop a way that students can take responsibility for their learning. And the research shows that there are half a dozen or so different things that we can do in our lessons in order to develop them. First one is to develop curiosity. Remember the Miss Jenkins story? Back half an hour ago. That's a great example of developing curiosity. Those kids were absolutely desperate to learn, and all she had done was say nothing and move some chairs. We have a big thing in many education organisations. We need to delineate and set out lesson objectives, and that's very, very important. What we have to do is think about how we set lesson objectives to stimulate curiosity rather than reduce it. If you walk into a room and get told this is what you're going to learn, no more, no less, that doesn't stimulate curiosity. If you're told you may learn this, and there's a whole range of possibilities about other things you may learn, that's something a bit more exciting. So stimulating curiosity. Secondly, control. Give your students control whenever possible. Now that's a bit scary, particularly for less experienced teachers. How do we do that? If I give them more control, will you like create chaos in the classroom? Yeah, you may. I'll make sure you've got my email address and come back to that. But it's helpful. The more control students have, the more autonomy they will take for their work. Some really interesting research came out from the government about 3 months ago saying that in the UK, teenagers have less choices about how they spend their time and their activities in any 24-hour period than the average prison inmate. Hopefully the food will be better, but nevertheless, that's quite a shocking statistic. So if we can give control, by which I mean give choices, give options, whenever possible, students will respond well. So that's control. Thirdly, set challenges. So set challenging targets. Give them some control to how they can set the targets, but set challenges. Realistic. but slightly out of reach. We're in the middle of the Olympics at the moment, and the amount of interviews we see with athletes, and they talk about pushing themselves, they talk about ever-increasing targets. They don't try and improve their performance by 50% in a day. They try and improve by 1%. So give challenges about the next stage, the next stage. And the nods that we see show that many of you will be doing this. So it's just a helpful reinforcement. Next, collaboration. Collaboration is crucial. And you can collaborate in all sorts of activities. Often we see when collaboration happens in group work, it's more about the end task being completed than the activity. The learning, by and large, is in the activity, in learning to work collaboratively, in learning to negotiate, in learning to compromise, and learning to build on other people's strengths. So as much collaboration as you can be helpful. Next, competition. We heard Colin advocating competition, and competition is very helpful. It needs to be managed right, and the environment needs to be set right. There's the movement away from competition. We read last week that the Rugby Football Union in the UK has banned competition for under 14s. No winners, so therefore no losers. Well, everyone's losing. Competition, if the rules are set right, if there is graceful acceptance of victory and gentle acknowledgement of defeat, it's helpful. And the most important person for people to be competitive with is themselves. So competition, can you be your personal best? Can you improve on targets? It's not necessarily that old clash of the titans setting one against another. That's not helpful. Finally, helping students to take responsibility. Take responsibility for their learning, take responsibility for their outcomes. This seems to be a really, really big challenge, and understandably so. It's understandably so because there is increasing pressure on teachers to get results. And one of the ways that we can get results, certainly in the short term, is by us taking responsibility and drip feeding and double marking and double checking and indicating if they just did this, they would get an extra mark, and so on and so on. And it's helpful, and we also need to balance that with encouraging our students to take responsibility. So, this is a model. It's one that we've seen work very successfully. The ones that I showed earlier are equally strong, and you may have your own. But have one model that you can go back to that will be helpful to work, to design, and to deliver results. The third of those three things that great teachers do is be self-reflective. And what I've seen is three different activities. Firstly, keep a regular journal. What we do well, what we need to improve on. Two examples of that. We ask our students to do that, don't we? We ask them to reflect on their tasks. What did you do well? What do you need to improve on? You can't do that for every lesson you deliver, but you can do that frequently. I do this. This is my notebook. The last couple of years, every workshop, every course, every conference, every talk, what I did well, and areas I need to work on. The great politician Tony Benn has kept a diary for 60 years. And he talks about three opportunities to learn. Firstly, do the thing. What are three? Secondly, you write it down and record it in your journal after reflection. And thirdly, you read it back and you learn yet again. So, pick a lesson, pick a day, pick a topic, and do a bit of self-reflection, a bit of analysis. What did I do well? What do I need to work on? Keep it in a little notebook like that, refer back to it, and see if you start looking at the things that you are outstanding at and the things that you want to work on. Second thing, ask for feedback. Don't wait for the dreaded observations that are going to affect your pay or going to affect your grades from senior management, but invite and welcome people into your lessons. I love a bit of feedback. I want to see if this new thing I'm trying is working. Can you make any recommendations? And if you don't want anyone else in, try this. Video yourself. sales teaching? That's not a bad number, probably again, about 10-15%. Helpful? Not helpful? How is it helpful?
It's very helpful because you can see what you're doing and how the children are reacting. Because when you're teaching, you don't always know exactly what every single student is doing and how they're reacting to it. So having that really matters.
Thank you. And that's a really good example. Getting a sense of perspective about what's going on, because it's like you need a seventh sense to be outside yourself and observe yourself, and the video gives you that. Bill Gates is sponsoring a very large project in the States where he has brought every teacher in every public school, sponsored by the state, video cameras, and running a project with some advice on videoing and self-reflection, and the results are stunning. There is a little bit of overcoming small goodness. There's a little bit of, oh, I don't want to watch that. And after we do it, a couple of times, a few times, we start picking up the things that we do that we really want to stop doing, and we also notice some of our great habits. If you can do it, even if you only do it once, even if you just stick your smartphone in the back of the room, get 10 minutes, get a clip of yourself, what you will learn from yourself will be very, very slow. That's the Now we've come quite a long way in this 40 minutes or so. And I'm really aware of a bit of a paradox in what I said. Earlier on, I said small steps. And now I've presented you quite a number of steps to take. So don't take them. Take the one that suits you. Take the one that helps. And invest a bit of time in that. We've got a little bit of time before we stop. So before I conclude, any questions or thoughts or comments or challenges on any of the things I said? I'd be really happy to hear from you. Okay. Well, I'm here for 2 days, as they say in Las Vegas. I'm here for a couple of days. I'm doing a couple of workshops. If people want to talk to me about any of these things and want to know any more detail about what I've talked about and what I'm alluding to, please feel free to contact me. And let's finish by thinking about what we are going to do. So all of the things that you've seen today, whether it's about your relationship with students, whether it's about how you can develop intrinsic motivation, your attitude towards professional development, and towards taking on new initiatives, think about where you are right now, and think about what's the one thing that you need to do that will be different, that will make a big difference to your teaching and learning. And what I've talked about today had a consistent thing running through it, which is about students taking responsibility. And that is not a new message. It's been known since Dickens' time. It's been known since the Middle Ages. It's been known since the Greeks' time. So let's finish by reflecting on the words of a Greek, Plutarch. He said, the mind doesn't require filling like a bottle. The mind only requires kindling to create an impulse to think independently. If we do one thing to help our students think in an independent way, we would have really added value to them. Good luck with this. I'd be really happy to hear all of your success stories. Share them with us, share them with your colleagues, and enjoy the next couple of days.